The briefing room was quiet, save for the hum of the overhead lights. Outside, the sprawling city of New Washington was bathed in the dying orange light of a late afternoon. A dozen Navy SEALs sat in a semicircle, their faces drawn tight with concentration. Hammer McAllister, their team leader, stood at the front of the room, eyes focused on the tactical map flickering on the wall. The team was ready, but there was tension in the air. This mission would be different. It was not a covert operation or a rescue mission, it was a challenge. "All right, listen up." Hammer's voice broke the silence, firm and commanding. "What we're up against is unlike anything we've faced before. Zarnak and his Boran forces think we're a joke. They think we don't belong here, in their arena. We're going to show them otherwise." He clicked a button, and a large hologram of the planet Vexera appeared on the wall. It was a barren wasteland, a planet known for its hellish climate, extreme terrain, and deadly fauna. There were no cities, no infrastructure, just endless deserts and jagged mountain ranges. Hammer's gaze swept over his team, his eyes settling on each one. "We're not just competing to survive. This is about proving humanity's place in the galaxy," Hammer continued. "You've all trained for this. But now it's real. The Boran, the Vren, the YRRK, they'll all be watching. They think we're weak. They think we're primitive. But that's where they're wrong." There was a murmur of agreement among the team, but Hammer wasn't finished. "We'll be up against the toughest species in the galaxy. The Boran, in particular, are massive and ruthless. They can tear a man in half with their bare hands. But strength alone won't win this. It's strategy, teamwork, and sheer willpower." Maya, one of the younger members of the team, spoke up. "What if they just wipe us out? We're humans, Hammer. We're not built for this like they are." Hammer's lips twitched into a half-smile, his eyes narrowing. "That's why we have a secret weapon, Maya." He paused for effect, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. "We're the Navy SEALs. And we've got something they don't, heart. We adapt. We fight smarter, harder, and we fight together." The team settled into an intense silence. Hammer's confidence was contagious. Maya nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. "Let's get to it," Hammer said before the room filled with the unmistakable hum of urgency. The SEALs boarded the transport ship, the hum of its engines vibrating through their bodies. The silence from the briefing room had followed them into the ship, but it was a different kind of silence now, a pre-battle stillness. They suited up in their black tactical armor, each piece clicking into place. The usual banter was absent, replaced by a sharp focus on the mission at hand. Hammer stood at the head of the group as they prepared to drop out of orbit. "Eyes on the mission," he reminded them, his tone cutting through the tension like a blade. The atmosphere on Vexera hit them the moment they touched down. The air was thick, suffocating with dust, the ground cracked and unforgiving. The sun overhead burned with a white-hot intensity, casting harsh shadows across the barren landscape. The transport door slid open, and the SEALs filed out in tight formation, scanning their surroundings with military precision. "This place is a hellhole," Breeze muttered, wiping the dust from his visor. "If I didn't know any better, I'd say the planet hates us." "It's not here to make you comfortable," Hammer replied flatly, already scanning the horizon. "Keep your heads on a swivel." They moved out, crossing the cracked desert in quick, synchronized steps. The first trial would begin in less than 2 hours. Each of them knew it wouldn't be easy. Vexera was designed to test the limits of any competitor. The terrain alone was enough to drain a soldier, let alone the myriad threats lurking beneath the surface. Their first test wasn't far ahead. A series of rocky outcroppings rose from the earth, jagged and sharp. The Boran had chosen this area to initiate the first trial, a mock combat exercise designed to test strength, speed, and coordination. "I don't like the look of this," he said, eyes narrowing as he examined the rocks. He was the team's tech specialist, always more comfortable with gadgets than the raw physical side of things. Still, his sharp instincts had earned him a spot with the SEALs. "We move fast, get in and out," Hammer said, his voice low. "We're here to test them, not just survive. We need to show them we can adapt to anything." They moved into position, silently making their way toward the rocks. Hammer signaled for the team to spread out, each member taking a different vantage point. The Boran soldiers had set up in the open, clearly expecting a standard attack. They were about to find out the humans were anything but standard. As they approached, the Boran took notice, their hulking forms stepping out from behind the rocks. The first wave was brutal, large, reptilian warriors with scales that shimmered in the harsh sunlight. Their eyes glinted with malice, the arrogance of superior strength etched into their every movement. Hammer's pulse quickened. It was showtime. He moved with precision, signaling Carter, the team's sniper, to take high ground. Carter crouched, his rifle steady as he took out one of the Boran warriors with a single shot. A clean kill, right through the head. Maya, fast and silent, darted forward, using the terrain for cover. She dropped a second Boran with a quiet, efficient strike, a knife pressed into its throat before it could scream. "Keep moving," Hammer ordered, and the team surged forward. The Boran were strong, no doubt about it. But the SEALs had something they didn't: tactics. The aliens charged with brute force, but the SEALs danced around them, using their speed and training to outmaneuver the much larger foes. Lee hacked into the Boran communication system, scrambling their signals just long enough to create chaos in their ranks. By the time the last Boran fell, the SEALs were already regrouping. The mock battle had only lasted a few minutes, but it had been intense. The ground around them was littered with the remains of the alien soldiers. Zarnak, the Boran general, stepped into view. He was massive, over 9 feet tall, his body a mass of rippling muscle and scales. His eyes locked on Hammer's. "You fight well, human," Zarnak's voice rumbled. "But it won't be enough." He stepped forward, sizing Hammer up with disdain. "This is just the beginning." Hammer's jaw tightened. "We'll see about that," he said, his voice cold. As Zarnak turned and walked away, Hammer's team exchanged looks. They had won this first round, but the war was far from over. "Don't get cocky," Hammer warned them. "We've got a long way to go." The SEALs stood tall, their bodies bruised but not broken. This was only the beginning. They weren't here just to survive. They were here to show the galaxy what humanity could do. And they would not back down. The landscape of Vexera stretched endlessly before them, barren, unforgiving, and hostile. The team had left the rocky outcroppings of the first trial behind, only to face a more daunting challenge, a brutal desert that seemed to warp the very notion of survival. Dust kicked up from the cracked earth, swirling like ghostly phantoms around the SEALs as they trudged forward. The air was dry, almost suffocating, and the sun hung low in the sky, casting a harsh, unforgiving light over everything it touched. No shelter. No respite. Hammer led the way, his boots leaving deep impressions in the dust, his sharp gaze never straying from the horizon. The team moved in a single file behind him, each step an effort, each breath another reminder of the hell they were walking through. Maya, the youngest of the team, wiped the sweat from her brow, her face streaked with dirt. "How much further?" she asked, her voice strained. "Not much," Hammer replied curtly. "Keep moving. We've got about 3 more clicks to cover." The desert was more than just an obstacle. It was a test of endurance, of mental fortitude. The heat was crushing, the terrain rough. It was a constant battle against exhaustion, the kind that gnawed at your soul and made every step feel like you were wading through tar. Lee, the tech guy, adjusted the rifle slung across his chest. "This place is a joke. No way anyone can survive here without some serious gear. Hell, we don't even have a decent map." "That's the point," Ruiz, the explosives expert, chimed in, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "The Boran didn't want to make it easy." Hammer shot a look back at them, a quiet warning in his eyes. "Keep it tight. Don't waste your energy on complaints." They pushed forward, their destination unclear, save for a marker set by the Boran forces, a set of jagged cliffs, where the next trial would take place. But between them and the cliffs lay the vast expanse of the desert, a place designed to break them down, not just physically, but mentally. As the hours passed, fatigue set in. Each of them was feeling the strain, but they were professionals, trained to operate on sheer willpower when necessary. Maya, her legs heavy, fell into step beside Hammer. "This isn't like training," she said, her voice low. "The heat, it's like nothing we've ever faced." Hammer nodded. "You get used to it or you don't. We'll make it, just stay focused." They trudged on in silence, the relentless sun beating down on them. It was a war of attrition, and the desert was winning. Then, suddenly, a low rumble echoed across the horizon. The ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly. Hammer stopped, holding up a hand to signal the team to halt. "What was that?" Maya asked, her voice tight with concern. "Stay alert," Hammer ordered. "Could be a storm, or worse." A moment later, the distant thunderous roar turned into a shriek. Out of nowhere, a massive sandstorm appeared, rising from the ground like some sort of living beast. The wind whipped violently, and the sand stung like tiny needles against their skin. "Move!" Hammer barked. "Head for the cliffs, now!" The team didn't hesitate. They trained for conditions like this, where visibility dropped to zero and the very ground seemed to shift beneath their feet. The storm was a savage beast, disorienting them, pulling them in every direction. Ruiz, struggling to keep his bearings, shouted over the roar of the wind. "I can't see anything! This is insane! Keep your heads down, follow me!" Hammer yelled, already leading the way toward the cliffs. His voice was calm, steady, no sign of panic, just sheer command. The wind howled, the sand swirling around them, cutting off any sense of direction. Lee's voice crackled over the comms, distorted by the storm. "Hammer! Hammer, I lost visual on Maya! Stay with the team!" Hammer commanded, pushing forward despite the chaos. The storm was a weapon, not just a physical challenge, but one designed to sow fear and confusion. They were being tested. Maya's voice came through the comms, a little breathless. "I'm here, just barely keeping up. Stay close," Hammer ordered, but he didn't need to say more. He knew Maya wouldn't falter, not with everything they had worked for hanging in the balance. Finally, the storm began to lose its fury, the winds dying down to a whisper. The team had made it through, but the strain was evident in their faces. Dust clung to them, their bodies battered from the elements. They reached the base of the cliffs just as the storm died completely, leaving the desert once again in a deathly silence. The cliffs loomed ahead, jagged and sharp, ominous against the burning sky. Hammer looked back at his team. "Good work. You made it. But we're not done yet. We've still got the next trial to face." Maya's shoulders sagged, and for a moment, it seemed like the exhaustion might overtake her. But then she squared her shoulders, lifting her head. "What's next, sir?" Hammer met her gaze. "We'll need to climb these cliffs. Get to the top before they send in the Boran forces to test our agility and endurance. The clock's ticking. Climb cliffs? In this heat?" Ruiz said incredulously. "We don't have a choice," Hammer replied. "It's this or nothing. You can rest when we've won this." "Yeah, because that's totally reassuring," Ruiz muttered, but even he was already adjusting his gear, preparing for the climb. They started their ascent, the rocky surface jagged and unforgiving. It took everything they had, hands scraped raw from the rough rock, feet slipping on the loose gravel. But it wasn't the physical exhaustion that weighed on them. It was the knowledge that the worst was still to come. The storm had been bad enough, but now they had to face what awaited them at the top. Halfway up, Lee cursed under his breath as his foot slipped. "Damn it! Focus!" Hammer snapped, reaching down to steady him. "We keep moving. One step at a time." As the team reached the top of the cliff, the tension was palpable. They could see the Boran forces waiting in the distance, dozens of them, standing at attention as if daring them to take the next step. Hammer wiped the sweat from his brow, his jaw set in determination. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." Maya stood next to him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Whatever comes next, we face it together, right?" Hammer nodded. "Together. Every damn step." And so, with the first of many trials behind them, the team prepared for the next test, one that would push them further, faster, and harder than they ever thought possible. The desert had been a challenge, but it was only the beginning. The real battle had only just begun. The wind had changed. The harsh desert landscape behind them now seemed a world away as the seals approached the towering silhouette of the Boran fortress. Nestled against jagged cliffs, it looked like a relic of an ancient war, a crumbling structure, half buried in sand, but still imposing. It loomed like a fortress of nightmares, a fitting venue for the final test. The sky was darkening, the sun setting rapidly, casting long shadows over the barren battlefield. Hammer squinted against the fading light, his eyes scanning the terrain ahead. The final trial, a high-stakes contest between them and the combined forces of the Boran, was about to begin. His team was tired, skin blistered, muscles sore, minds taxed, but they were still standing. Still fighting. Hammer gave his team a quick look over. They were all still in one piece, but that could change in an instant. "Everyone clear on the plan?" he asked. Maya nodded. "We're going in quiet, take out any stragglers. We move as one." Lee, adjusting his weapon, shot a glance at the fortress ahead. "This place gives me the creeps. There's something wrong about it. Like it's waiting for us." "Focus, Lee," Hammer said. "We don't get to second guess now." Ruiz, his eyes scanning the perimeter for traps, grunted. "The Boran are notorious for ambushes. This isn't going to be a walk in the park." Hammer wasn't worried. The fortress was a fortress, sure. But he wasn't about to be intimidated by walls and stone. He had something else on his side, his team. "Let's move out. Stick to the shadows," he ordered. They approached the fortress from the rear, keeping low and moving quickly. The Boran had set up defensive positions, but they didn't expect a strike from this direction. Hammer's team used their stealth to their advantage, slipping past the first few sentries without raising an alarm. But that wasn't going to last long. At the base of the fortress, Hammer signaled for them to halt. He studied the structure, his mind calculating angles, assessing risks. The top of the fortress had high walls and a large gate at the center. He couldn't see much from this angle, but he knew the Boran forces would be entrenched, waiting for them to make a move. "Lee, hack into their comms. Ruiz, set up a perimeter charge just in case we need an exit strategy. Maya, get eyes on the high ground. We need intel before we go in." Maya, always quick on her feet, climbed the nearest rock formation with the grace of a predator. She disappeared into the shadows. Hammer turned back to his team. "Stay sharp. We can't afford to make a mistake now." The tension in the air was thick as they worked. Minutes passed in dead silence, only the occasional click of equipment, or the scuff of boots on stone breaking it. The sounds of the Boran preparing their defenses echoed faintly in the distance. Finally, Maya's voice crackled over the comms. "I've got eyes on 2 Boran guards at the north tower. They're chatting. No sign of anyone else, but it's hard to say for sure." "Good," Hammer said, his voice steady. "We're moving in. Lee, you're up." Lee nodded, working swiftly at his device. His fingers danced over the controls, bypassing the Boran's rudimentary security system. "This won't take long," he muttered. A few seconds later, his eyes lit up. "We're in. They're not expecting us to come from this direction. We've got about 5 minutes before they notice the breach." "Perfect," Hammer said. "Maya, you're with me. We're going straight for the control room. Lee, Ruiz, cover our backs. Get to the roof if you have to." Without another word, they moved. Quiet, fluid. Like a ghost in the night. The corridors inside the fortress were dark, damp, and eerily quiet. The only sounds were their breathing and the faint clinking of armor as they moved deeper. Hammer's instincts screamed at him to be alert. Every shadow could hide a threat. He gestured for Maya to take point, her sharp eyes scanning every corner for danger. They reached the first checkpoint without incident. The first wave of Boran soldiers were still unaware. But Hammer knew that wouldn't last. Zarnak wouldn't let them go so easily. He was bound to notice their presence soon enough. Maya signaled for a halt. Ahead, the control room doors were heavily guarded, at least 4 Boran soldiers standing watch. Hammer's mind clicked into high gear. They had 2 options: go in hot, or find a way to outmaneuver them. There wasn't time for a drawn-out fight. Hammer moved in, slipping behind a column. We need to take them down quietly. Ruiz, you've got the explosives ready? He whispered. Ruiz's voice came through the comms, low and controlled. I've got a couple of flashbangs rigged. Just give the word. Do it. The explosion of light and sound was instantaneous, stunning the Boran soldiers. Hammer's team moved fast, incapacitating the disoriented enemies with swift, lethal precision. Maya took down the first guard with a well-placed knife strike, while Ruiz and Lee followed suit, using the brief window of confusion to eliminate the rest. The control room was within reach now. Hammer nodded at Maya, signaling her to open the door. It wasn't until they were inside that they saw it: Zarnak. The Boran general was standing at the center of the room, his hulking form silhouetted against the dim light. He was waiting. Did you think you could win this? Zarnak's voice rumbled, deep and mocking. You're in my domain now, humans. Your tricks won't save you. Hammer stood tall, unflinching. We didn't come here for tricks. We came to win. Zarnak let out a low laugh, his teeth bared. He took a step forward, cracking his knuckles. You fight well. But you're still just meat to me. The two locked eyes for a moment, a silent challenge between them. Then, without warning, Zarnak lunged, his massive hands aiming for Hammer's throat. The sheer force of the attack was enough to knock the air out of him, but Hammer was ready. He ducked, dodging the Boran's grasp and delivering a swift elbow to Zarnak's side. The blow staggered the Boran, but it wasn't enough. Zarnak roared, swinging his fist in a wide arc. Hammer ducked again, using his smaller frame to his advantage. He wasn't as strong as the Boran, but he was faster. He pivoted, landing a punch to the side of Zarnak's head, only to have the blow absorbed by the thick scales. Come on, Zarnak! Hammer grunted, ducking another wild swing. Is that the best you've got? The fight continued, a brutal exchange of blows, each strike feeling like a freight train slamming into him. But Hammer wasn't going to back down. He was a seal. This was his moment. With a final surge of strength, Hammer used Zarnak's size against him. As the Boran swung wildly, Hammer stepped inside the arc of the punch and delivered a brutal knee to his midsection, knocking the wind out of him. Zarnak staggered, and Hammer took his chance, wrapping an arm around his neck, pulling him to the ground. Zarnak fought, but his strength was waning. The Boran's arrogance had finally caught up with him. With one final, decisive twist, Hammer locked in a chokehold, squeezing until the Boran's struggles stopped. The room fell silent. Panting, Hammer stood over him, blood dripping from his knuckles. He turned to his team. We won. Maya's voice came through the comms. We did. Together. As the team secured the control room, they knew this victory wasn't just about them. It was about proving that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest and survive, no, thrive. They had shown the Boran that Earth's finest were more than ready for whatever came next.